It's time now for the Tom Lacey Sports Show on Hometown Radio, WIRY. Here's our host, Tom Lacey.
Hope everyone's doing well on this Saturday. It's a little snowy out there. Make sure you drive safely. We have some great guests today. We have Pat Goodell. I'll go over all the accomplishments and accolades he has when we get to him. And also, I'm going to call him Dr. Bob Heins. I always have to call him Doctor. And we'll get to him as well. And then Mary Dupree will be calling in because her granddaughter is playing hockey in Vermont right now. So it's going to be a great show. We have never talked about triathlons or running, some of the great events we used to have in Plattsburgh, like the Bud Run and the Midnight Run, and there's a whole bunch of things. And after I do the sports score, I'll get right into that. Okay, so what do we got here? I did have it, and hopefully everyone's doing well today. All right. Beekmantown beat Plattsburgh High School in last year's rematch for sectional championship, 59-23. And Beekmantown, this is boys basketball. No one had double figures for Beekmantown, which is that means that's good teamwork. Saranac Lake beat Ticonderoga 45-31. Zach McCarthy for Saranac Lake had 15. Franklin Academy beat Peru, and that was 69-52. Cam Keating had 22. Chase Karen had 14 for Peru. NCCS pulled a big upset over Saranac. I don't have the exact score. I know NCCS had 59, but Colton Castine had 27 points, and he's a force underneath. Carson Duffield had 10. And girls basketball, Mariah beat Lake Placid 61-15. Alexis Mascarenas had 13. In last year's sectional championship matchup between Saranac and NCCS, Saranac won going away this time, 46-27. And last year's MVP, Brenna Duquette, had 13 points and 10 rebounds. She'll be playing in college. Schroon Lake, this is girls as well, won 51-21 over Wells, and Olivia Hartwell had 26. Also, track and field, the Peru boys won the event. Blake Porter, Alex Wells, Oliver Langto, and Elliot Supley all won 2 events. Saranac girls with Coach Verkey. They won again like they usually do. They're tough to beat. Sarah Levine, she had 3 wins. Wrestling, Beekmantown beat AuSable 45-30, and the big matchup was last year's sectional championship between Jacob Brown and Warren Prey, and Jacob Brown won 9-1 in last year's sectional championship. So, okay, one thing I like to do is sometimes we have prank phone calls, and I want to see if Mr. Goodell recognizes this prank phone call. Here we go.
And let's see what this person has to say. Good evening, you're on Thursday Night Line.
Yes, voting.
Okay, who would you like to vote for?
How about Homer Gatto?
Homer Gatto. I don't think that he's an announced candidate. Do you have a vote for either Walter Mondale or Ronald Reagan?
How about Homer Gatto?
Homer Gatto. Okay, I'll put it down as a write-in.
Okay, Mr. Goodell, who is that guy?
It sounds like Red Lacey, possibly.
There you go.
Tommy's dad.
At 80 years old, pranking the college radio station. And you know him.
Yeah, that must have been a classic.
Okay, we're going to start off with Dr. Heins, okay? But, Pat, you can kick in anytime you want and just make a comment. You guys, anytime you want to just kick in. And one of the main things, and I'll probably have the same question for you as well, Pat. Why do you Why do you do it? What makes you do these triathlons and these unbelievable events? What is the incentive that makes you really want to do something like that? Because they are difficult.
I know it becomes a mental thing, but I always enjoyed competing, and whether I was climbing the 7 summits of the world or triathlon, it's you against yourself, really. You're running against the clock, and you.
Okay, we're having a little problem here with the mic, and we'll be fine. We're gonna have to share the mic.
I'd be happy to share the mic with Pat.
Just pass it back and forth.
No, it's one of those things that I've always been competitive in sports, and whether I was climbing the 7 summits of the world or starting to do triathlon, it's sort of an individual event, and you force yourself to compete against yourself and the clock, and I enjoy it. I'm still doing it. It really has become a way of life for me. I mean, with the training and it's almost an all-year type of thing.
What was your very first triathlon? Not Ironman, but just at any distance.
The first triathlon I did was actually from New York City to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We did one.
Oh
You
my gosh.
actually jumped in the Hudson River and swam upstream, and then ended up on a bicycle biking all across northern New Jersey. And one thing I found out, it was beautiful. Then you had to hike your bike up the Camden Bridge, and then you ran, and you ended up finishing running up the Rocky Steps.
Oh my gosh.
and that was cool. There were more steps than I thought, or I was more tired. I wasn't sure, but that's the first one I ever did, swimming in the Hudson.
And you have done the triathlon, the Ironman in Hawaii, have you?
I've done the Ironman Hawaii 4 times.
Wow. Tell me about the feeling crossing that finish line on your very first one.
The very first one I did in Hawaii was in Lake Placid, and it's an event. It's something you never forget. I started and really didn't know a lot about triathlons. I had finished climbing in Antarctica and had frostbite on my fingers, and wasn't able to finish the 7 summits. And somebody said, "Well, why don't you kill yourself at sea level and do an Ironman?" And I didn't know anything about it, but I said, "Okay." So I immediately signed up for a full in Lake Placid, and it took a while. But when you do that, you either love it and want to keep doing it, or you hate it and never want to do it again. And I got hooked, and I've done 18 fulls and 35 halves over the time. So it's a way of life, but I still enjoy it.
I believe you're the oldest person ever to complete the Lake Placid triathlon?
That was kind of fun. I'm the first 80-year-old and only 80-year-old so far that's finished Ironman Lake Placid.
How about Maui? Were you like in the top 5? Were there some?
Hawaii is a whole different thing. Kona is... It's hot. It's humid. I've finished in the top 10.
Nice.
But that's a brutal race. And it's also, you swim in the ocean, and you never know what you're going to get in the ocean swims with currents and that type. No creatures that I saw, but some people got stung by jellyfish.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question.
Yeah, I was lucky. I didn't have that. It's a non-wetsuit swim. And
wow.
It's brutal.
Of the 3, running, biking, and swimming, which one are you the best at, in your opinion? In my age group, probably the swim. I've gotten better at the bike and better at the run. Somebody says, "What's your favorite one?" I always say the run, because you're done when you finish it. Gosh, that's as everyone knows, Dr. Heins was a very successful dentist in the area. I've had some people already message me. There's a ton of people that are listening to you that you have performed dentistry on, and they are so happy that you are here. But they didn't.
That.
Yeah, one of them was Sherry Bach. Do you remember her? Sherry Bach. She said she was your neighbor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Way back when, yeah.
Yeah. the thing I remember most about you early on was you were an unbelievable tennis player too. Unbelievable.
Played a lot of tennis, and it's funny. Yesterday was the first time I ever tried playing pickleball. My son, that's a whole different sport. But yeah, tennis was the first love I had. Then we played golf, and then started climbing the 7 summits of the world with some dental friends that I had, and yeah.
Was Everest? Did you climb Everest?
No, we never got to Everest. It was funny. We were going to go to Everest. That's a long story. We were going to go to Everest Base Camp, hike to Everest Base Camp, and we were in Nanche Bazaar, which is a town which starts the climb up, and it started, believe it or not, raining, and the yaks, they could go through like 10 feet of snow, but they couldn't stand the rain, and they were falling. The yaks were actually slipping and falling. So I got 13 miles from Everest and never saw it.
That's unbelievable. Now, in high school, let me get back to the triathlons. Any flat tires ever?
You know, knock on wood, never had a flat tire. I had a chain come off a couple of times.
Okay.
And I'll tell you one quick bizarre story about triathlon. There's always something that happens in a triathlon that you're not prepared for, or it's unique. I did Lake Placid one year. First thing I did was on the swim, somebody hit me and knocked my goggles off.
That
Got
happens,
on the
yeah.
bike and was so screwy, I completely screwed up the computer setup on the bike. So I didn't have any computer. Got into the transition area, and normally people hand you your bag with your clothes change. And I got in, and the first thing I did, open the bag, and had a sports bra on it. I had picked a woman's bag up by my stage. And then on the run, one of the marshals actually ran over me with a bike. That all happened in 1 year, which was crazy. So,
gosh. And how do you, when you're doing a full Ironman triathlon, where do you find time to eat? Do you put it in your pocket, or what do you do on that?
That's an important question, because you have to hydrate. First of all, you're hydrating a lot, but there's things called goos. They're almost like a cake. I'm trying to think of. It's almost pure sugar.
Yes.
It's carbs and a little bit of protein, but you have to learn what to do and how to do that. Because I would take a goo about every 20 minutes, but the hydration is what's important. And one of the things about Ironman is it's not only the mileage in that, it's the weather. I mean, this year I did 2 halves. One was in Muscle Man in Geneva, New York. It was 91 degrees. The last one I did in New York at the 70.3 in Jones Beach, it was basically almost a tropical storm. So you get high. But hydration is an important part of that. That's one of the important disciplines.
Jones Beach is known for sharks. You didn't see any, did you?
Didn't see any sharks. I probably would have. I might have swam better.
As far as your top 2 local inspirations, your very top 2 local, who would that be? I should have probably sent you that where you could have thought about it.
You mean from a standpoint of...
could be family members, could be
my dad.
friends. Okay.
My dad, I think, was an inspiration. And my mother. I'm a lot like my mother. She was always driven to do things, and was very active in everything. And they both were 46ers.
Gosh.
Climbed when they were in their 50s. I think my dad is probably the one person that I really looked up to, and probably my football coach, Ernie DeGudis, way back when in PHS. He was an inspiration for me too, and Thelma Douglas. Now that I think about it, Thelma Douglas was for PHS for both boys and girls. And I'll tell you one thing I did for Thelma. I took her pin. She wanted to get to Antarctica and wasn't able to do it on a trip. They wouldn't take the women, and I took one of her pins and actually buried it in the ice in Antarctica. That was kind of cool.
That is very cool. How about professional inspirations? Any that you can think of?
One person, and I went to Colgate before I ended up at Baylor, and the year before it was Jim Brown was at Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk to people that were there at Colgate, some of the football players that I knew, and it was like Jim Brown scored 38 points by himself. The thing people don't realize, his best sport probably was lacrosse.
I heard that, yes.
And he also played basketball. So, I mean, I never really met him,
Mm-hmm.
but I think he would be one that I would have looked up to.
Did you play football at Colgate?
No, I was going to, but I didn't. I went out. I was gonna play, and I went out and ran the first time, and wasn't sure what position I was going to be because I played linebacker at PHS.
Mm-hmm.
But the linebackers there were bigger than trucks, and that's when Colgate was good. They'd play Army and Illinois and Ray Nitschke and those guys. So no, I didn't.
You are in the Plattsburgh High School Hall of Fame, deservingly. What did you? How many sports did you play in high school, and what was your favorite?
Football was my favorite.
Okay.
Football and baseball probably second. I ran track and basketball. I think they kept me on the basketball team only because I played football. Because I can remember one time Coach Goodell said we were going to Lake Placid. And we were stopping by a ski slope, and he said, "Heins, if you want to get out and ski, we'll pick you up when the game's over." So that's actually a true story. So I think football, though, was the one I really enjoyed because I grew up in Texas. And Texas,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I 6 years in Texas and came up here as a sophomore. But I mean, Texas in those days, you were playing football in the third grade,
Mm-hmm.
with uniforms and everything else. And by the time you got to high school, you sort of knew the fundamentals pretty well.
Can you talk about your family? Any triathletes in your family? And
Sure. My son Craig, who's took over my dental practice. He played tennis and soccer, and actually went to Europe and played on an American soccer team over there.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter, eldest daughter Erica. It's kind of funny. They said I put the plague on because once I started doing triathlons, either somebody else in your family will do it. Well, Erica, my eldest, did it and has competed in Lake Placid. And one of the coolest things that ever happened, we ended up doing an full Ironman in Mount Tremblant, Canada,
Yep.
and ended up finishing together, which was really cool. I was in the 70s and she was in the late 40s, and that was a great experience. So she's done quite a few. Now she's in ultra running.
Wow.
So.
That is very difficult too. Did someone hopefully take a picture when you both crossed that finish line?
Yeah, that's a great picture, and they had it on TV, and that's one of my favorite pictures.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember an athlete named Bob Gendron? You remember him at Plattsburgh High School?
What year would that be?
I thought you might have went to school with him. Okay. He was my uncle. I just wanted to throw that in there, but he's in the Hall of Fame there as well. So track and field too. So I thought I'd throw that in there. Okay. Talk about your dentist practice just a bit. Do you miss it?
I miss the people. I really do. I'm sort of a people person. I enjoy that, and one of the nice things about doing dentistry, being a dentist in a small town, is people call you a doc. They see you in the streets, and I've always enjoyed that. The thing that probably ran me out of dentistry was the computer age. I mean, I used to love those little handouts that we had, the little charts and that, and then you got into computers, and I didn't do that. But I do miss seeing people. And when I go in the office, Craig's office, it's kind of fun to see patients there, and we sit down and chat. Because some great people in North Country.
Of the triathlons that you did, is there one that really stands out where you just felt great? I mean, you just had it that day. Is there anything that really stands out?
I think one of the ones was Tremblant in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
The Canadian government spent $1 jillion to redo the roads, and it's a great venue. And you finish you finish coming down a hill and around people who are having. It's around restaurants, and it just was a really cool feeling to just run that and know you were gonna do it. And the other thing was when I was 80 and finished, that was a classic because people were waiting and cheering, and that was just a great event.
How are you as a hill runner? Or do you when you see a hill, do you get a little discouraged?
You learn to deal with that.
Yeah.
You try. It's the same thing with wind. In the bike, you're trying to say wind is your friend, and you're pedaling like heck trying to get through it. You learn. On these big hills, I sometimes walk them. I mean, I don't. When I do the full Ironman marathon, I'm walking quite a bit too.
That's fine.
Because people don't realize when you do. We've already swam, 2.25 miles, and you biked 112, and then you're running a marathon. It's a little different than just starting out with one. Although I've never run one marathon by itself. I've done 18 marathons, but they've all been after the swim and the bike.
Mm-hmm. What is your top rank in your age group as a triathlete?
I won the world's 70.3 World Championships in Canada, so I won that. And I'm ranked right now. Well, I'm 85, so I'm one in the world in the 85 to 90 group.
That is awesome. All from Plattsburgh, New York, ranked number 1 in the world. That's just unbelievable and great. Good job on that. What was your toughest one ever? The toughest one that you just didn't have it that day?
Kona. The World Championships in Kona. The swim got me one. It was kind of funny. We were swimming and there's currents, and if you haven't swum in the ocean very much, and I hadn't, you forget about the currents. And we ended up. There were 4 of us together, and I never finished. I mean, we got toward the finish line, and one of the volunteers says, "Get in the boat." I said, "What do you mean get in the boat? You're done. You're finished." And so they hauled us out. It was sort of the walk of shame because you never finished the swim, and you end up having to get all your gear and bike back to the hotel. And the Irish guys, they were going to go hit the Heineken. So that was probably the toughest.
Okay, I'm going to do some word association with you. Okay, don't worry. Let's start off with Jim Adams.
Jim Adams, great guy, fantastic guy. The one thing about, we used to do the Y-Tri, and I was in my probably early 70s, and I figured I had no problem. And all of a sudden, I get this Jim Adams wins, and I'm going, who is he? He's a legend.
Yes,
he has done more of the from the one in Tin Man. He's done Tin Man. He's done 12 or 13 or I don't know how many Ironman Lake Placids. But Jim's a great guy. Really, really competitive.
Yeah,
a fun guy to be with. And we've finished a couple of races together. I was in the 80s, won my 80 group, and he won the 75 group. So we got our pictures taken together. That was kind of cool.
Let's go to Pat Goodell. Word association. No, word association. Yeah, just word association with Pat Goodell.
Swimming in the lake at 60 degrees. Tremendous athlete, I should say.
Yes, okay. Usain Bolt.
Usain Bolt. Unbelievable runner. Fast.
Bruce Jenner.
I could tell you a story about Bruce Jenner, but I won't.
He was here in 76.
I saw him in 76 with his wife and his daughter. What can I say? A little surprising, I guess.
Okay. Mark Allen. Triathlete.
Mark Allen, incredible will.
Dave Scott. Who was better?
Who's better? They'd fight it out. You never knew. One year one would be better, and the next year the other would be better. They're two of the highest competitor rankings in Ironman. They're truly Iron men.
Mary Dupree.
Mary Dupree, fantastic athlete. Mary, I'm supposed to do this in one word. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
She's just a tremendous competitor.
I'm going to end up asking all three of you guys this. When you swim in the lake, I mean, it's pitch dark out there. I mean, and when do you start? And the time of year. When's your first time in the water, and when do you end? Have you guys ended yet?
Well, Pat and Jeff and Mary probably still be out there swimming. They have all this gear. We usually start when, in April.
Oh my gosh!
Probably April. I don't like to. I have a thermal wetsuit too, but I don't like to get in when the temperatures, in the low 60s. It gets a little cool. Pat probably swims in the 50s, but that's its fun time. We go out in the morning, 6 o'clock.
Yep.
And all alone on the beach and just let it rip.
I know. When I go for walks, I see you guys out there, and I am flat out amazed. It's an inspiration to me too, to see you guys doing that. And I remember Mary saying she saw me swimming once, and she said, "You got to wear one of those things in a bit. What are they? Like a balloon type thing? I'm not sure. Like a buoy.
Pull buoy.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons you do that if you're in the lake is because it protects you from boats.
Okay.
And that type of thing. But it also, if you had a bad cramp or something, you can grab hold of it and keeps you afloat.
Mm-hmm. Seeing you guys doing that, I chuckle when I see it, but I'm amazed. So let's go to Coach Pat Goodell now, and we'll get back to you, Mr. Heins, later. Okay, we've got Pat Goodell here. Pat, as you know, he's in the Hall of Fame at Plattsburgh High School. He taught for 28 years at Plattsburgh. He taught just about every sport possible: baseball, football, swimming, basketball. He did everything, and he coached football for 7 years, and baseball. He went to the Final Four, I believe, 4 or 5 times, which is amazing. And so, Pat, what was your first Plattsburgh race when you came to Plattsburgh? What was the very first race? Didn't have to be a triathlon.
My first race was a midnight run that was sponsored by Plattsburgh Runners Club and Peabody's Bar, of course, being held at midnight. That's where the race finished. And it was a lot of fun down there with a basket of peanuts that you'd get and your pitcher of beer, and running at midnight in 5 miles back then was the extent of my distance running at that point in my life.
Mm-hmm. Was the YMCA, when you came, first of all, Pat played football at Cortland State, and I believe, you can correct me on this, Pat, were you a defensive back or linebacker?
Yeah, I played defensive back.
Okay. And what was the best season you guys had?
Back when I was in Cortland, we were still playing a lot of Division II schools.
Okay.
And we struggled a lot. We played East Stroudsburg and the Connecticut schools, Central Connecticut, Southern Connecticut. And it was a tough schedule. And we usually finished right around 500, sometimes a little below 500. And now proud to say they're doing well. They're still in the NCAA Division III playoffs. Today they play Springfield, which is now dropped down to Division III. They're in the second round. And probably in snowy Cortland, they've got a game today at noon. And they're the defending national champions at the Division III level. They won the national championship last year, which is really quite an achievement.
What'd you think about that game? Wasn't that amazing?
That was really exciting. And the fun thing is now with ESPN carrying these games day after day, the game was on for almost an entire week after. At various times of day, you'd put the television on and you'd see the Cortland game on television. It was really fun to watch, fun to feel like I was a part of. I might get this wrong, the first part of it, the Cortica jug.
Did you play in that?
Yeah, the Cortica Jug is an annual rivalry game between Ithaca and Cortland, and the Jug was developed by a couple of brothers. One went to Ithaca, one went to Cortland, and the winner of the Cortland-Ithaca game won just a simple jug, and they've actually had to come up with a second jug now and paint it over and add more dates and years to it, but it's a really big rivalry game. In the past few years, they've actually moved it to bigger stadiums and bigger venues. A few years ago, it was at Giant Stadium, and then a couple of years ago, it was at Yankee Stadium, and the towns are really happy to move that game out of their small little town of Ithaca and Cortland for the games because of the tremendous crowds that it brings and the revelry after the game for the winning team or the parting by the losing team. But it's become a really big rivalry in Central New York and across Division III football. One of those teams usually goes pretty far in the Division III playoffs.
Now, you played in it 4 times?
I played in it 2 times, my junior and my senior year.
And how'd you do?
We lost both times, one time by quite a bit, and one time my senior year was a little bit closer, and Ithaca at that time was a real powerhouse in Division III football in the late 70s and early 80s.
Do you go to watch it?
I went to the game in Yankee Stadium a few years ago, and that was really fun. Being a Yankee fan, it was actually my first time in the new Yankee Stadium, and we got to watch it up in one of the press boxes or the areas where companies own the suite, and it was really fun. We got fed well and got to see alumni and friends from back 40 years ago.
Now, triathlons, your very first one, and why? Why do you do triathlons?
Well, after graduating from college and playing football and looking for something to do like Bob competitively, I got into the sport of triathlon. And a friend of mine, Joe Porcelli, who also did some triathlons and became a real accomplished triathlete in the area, along with his wife, Gail. We did the Lake Placid Ironman in 1982, and I think you might have been there yourself around that time. It was a half Ironman at that time, not the full Ironman.
Yes. And
that was my first race, and it was before really wetsuits, or at least we didn't have one. It was before triathletes wore bike shoes, or at least we didn't have any. We had to wear a helmet. I didn't have a helmet at that time, so I remember asking my parents if they could go through my old stuff at home where I'm from on Staten Island, and they brought up my youth hockey helmet, and I wore my youth hockey helmet. I managed to squeeze it on my head for the bicycle race. And the water, Labor Day weekend in Mirror Lake, was 52 degrees. It was really a cold swim with no wetsuit.
Yes.
And I remember getting onto the bicycle after the race and struggling to tie my sneakers because my hands were shaking and shivering so much. And Joe Porcelli came by me on the bike and looked at me and said, "Pat, you don't look good. Your lips are blue." So I think I probably had hypothermia before hypothermia was really even a thing at that point. No one had really heard of that, but it was uncontrolled shivering. I was just happy to get on the bike and warm up a little bit on those hills.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that. And just to let you know, I finished last in that, last place. So
that's the humbling thing about triathlon. It's not where you finish, it's just finishing.
Yeah.
And you look to compete with yourself, like Bob said, or in your age group, and you don't even really look to compete against the young guys anymore. But what's fun sometimes in triathlon is they write your age on your calf, and when you're running in a triathlon race, you'll go by people that are significantly younger than you, and you can see by their age written on their calf, or vice versa. They'll go by you and see your age written on your calf, and you get some funny comments from people when they go by you, like, "Hey, good job doing that at your age." And then you think in your head, "Why am I doing this at my age?" And then, I look and see a guy like Bob and races that I do, and you talked about inspiration before, and just being active at this point in my life at 65 years old, and seeing Bob in his 80s is just such a valuable thing to be able to do and be.
It sure is. And I'm going to get to that. What are your the 2 inspirations, local inspirations? You just said Bob Heins, Dr. Heins. Who would be your another one?
As far as triathlons go,
Well, just anyone. Doesn't have to be triathlons. Could
Bob
be
and I
anything.
have a mutual friend, Jeffrey Burdo, and
Okay.
he's one of our early morning swim partners. And Jeffrey is up for anything at any time, whether it be a 6 a.m. swim. He's still working. That's why we still swim at 6. Truth be known, if it was up to us retired guys, we'd probably go later in the day at 11 o'clock when it's a little bit warmer and light out. But Jeffrey has to get to work, so we get out there and swim at 6 when it's dark and cold. And but then we're done for the day, and then Bob in his Ironman training says, "Well, now I'm off to do 80-mile bike or
my gosh.
a 13-mile run." The triathlons I compete in are what you call sprint triathlons. They're shorter races. So my swims are only a half mile or a quarter mile at the longest. My bikes are 15, 25 miles, and my runs are between 5Ks and 10Ks. And that's more my speed and my ability to complete.
Of the three, what's your best between running, swimming, and biking? What's your best?
Well, one of the interesting things, you get results from your races and they compare your results to the other people in your age group. So I guess comparatively, biking would be what I'm best at compared to other people that I participate against. But I was always a runner from an early age, going in running races, and that's what I enjoy the most. But like Bob said, that's at the end of the race, and sometimes your legs don't feel the same after you've swam and biked. Even if it's just a 600-yard swim and a 14-mile bike, it's tough to get off and run because sometimes your legs just don't feel like they're yours. And part of the sport of triathlon is getting used to running after you bike, because it's not the same as just going out for a run. But it's so difficult to do. You don't do it as often as you should, but that's one of the important parts of training, is running after you bike.
Your first high school phys ed job was at Westport?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I first came to Plattsburgh, I worked at the YMCA for a year and had a great experience doing a lot of things with a lot of different age groups of people. And then I was fortunate enough to get my first teaching job down at Westport, New York, and that was in 1982. And Tom Bove was the other phys ed teacher there at the time, a Plattsburgh High School grad and Plattsburgh Hall of Fame member himself, and renowned girls basketball coach, but a great coach at all sports and all levels, and he was a great person to break in under. And Westport was a great school to work at because you knew everybody, every kid in school. The school only had 300 kids in grades K through 12, so a graduating class would be 15, 20 students, and there were multi-sport athletes. Everybody played all three sports, and it was just a wonderful place to break in. I taught elementary phys ed, so I had little kids from K through 5 in the gym, and then I had health class where I taught 11th graders or 7th graders health class, and then the other part of that job was teaching driver education, where I got out into the car with the seniors in high school and taught them how to drive. So in a day I would see kindergartners and seniors in high school, so it was a lot of fun.
I'm sure it was. You've been married for 41 years to Patty Goodell. And do you want to talk about her real quick?
Yeah, sure. We're going on 42 years next week. December 10th will be our 42nd anniversary.
Phenomenal.
And, Tom, you were school-age friends with my wife, Patty, and she's the reason I came to Plattsburgh. We met at Cortland, where I went to college, and I moved back here with her, and her family took me in and treated me well, and the people of the North Country have treated me well and given me a lot of opportunities to live a great life here in the North Country.
What do you think about Staten Island? Tell me a little bit about Staten Island.
Growing up, it was a lot different probably than it is now. I'd like to think back then when I was there, it was kind of like a big Plattsburgh. We had great rivalries between high schools. We played a Thanksgiving Day football game every year against Newdorp High School, and that was a great game. Whether we were winless that year and Newdorp was in the city championship, we would still give them a tough game. And those rivalry games, you can never count on the record being the indicator of the result. Sometime the losing team, when that was the game they pointed to on their schedule, which was us, where I went to school at Curtis High School on Staten Island. They've really turned things around and done a great job and been at the top of the city football rankings every year. But Staten Island's changed a lot since I grew up, and it's much busier now, much more like the city. It was a lot more rural then, but there's still a lot of rural parts, even down in parts of New York City, which probably would surprise a lot of people.
Yes, it would. I remember reading once that said the best tourist thing to do in New York City is to take the Staten Island Ferry because it's inexpensive. You see the Statue of Liberty, and it just I'm sure you've been on that Staten Island Ferry a ton of times.
I used to take the Staten Island Ferry a lot of times. My high school where I went used to overlook New York City and the New York City skyline, and we would oftentimes just take the Staten Island Ferry to go over what we used to call going to the city, going to Manhattan Island, and we'd take it over, and it's free. You can actually ride across the Staten Island Ferry to New York Harbor for free. It's been various rates over the years, from a nickel to a dime to a quarter to a regular entry, just like you're getting on a bus or subway. But it is free now, and it's a great trip. You go right by the Statue of Liberty. You go by Governor's Island, which was the Coast Guard base right off of Manhattan, and then into South Ferry Terminal, which is right in downtown Manhattan near Wall Street. And you could walk up to what was then the Twin Towers, and it was just a great fun day.
Again, we have Pat Goodell here. YMCA, when you were there, you did a phenomenal job. You started so many things. The Y Try. Tell me some of the other things that you started while you were at the Y. I know of the Y Try.
Yeah, we started the Y Try because, again, going to triathlon races all around the area, we said we've got such a great area here in Plattsburgh with Lake Champlain and nice rural roads and great places to bike and run. Why not try to have a Plattsburgh triathlon? So we did that, and we coordinated with Saranac Lake and Tupper Lake and developed what we even called the Adirondack Triple Crown Series, where people would go in each race and try to promote each other's races and award points based on completion in each of those races. So the Y Try was a real fun experience, and Lake Champlain was a great place to swim. It started off right here at the Northway Motel in Plattsburgh that George Hubble let us use, and then we moved it out to Point of Rush State Park with Chris Case as the park director out there, and it was a great venue to also continue that race, and it continued on for many years. Some of the other fun things we did in Plattsburgh when I was at the Y was adult basketball, and we did some fun tournaments. The Over 30 League was a really fun league, and I met a lot of guys who are now well established in their careers then and continue to play basketball now. And the under 6 foot tournament we used to also do for guys where the baskets were lowered down to 8.5 feet, and even guys who were vertically challenged, like a lot of us, an inability to even touch the rim, were able to get up around the rim in an under 6 foot tournament on an 8.5 foot basket.
Yeah, you must remember Mr. Garrow playing in those adult leagues. Even at his age, he was tough.
Yeah, so many great basketball players in those leagues, Bob Garrow being one of them. Tom Ayers used to be able to shoot the three-point shot before the three-point shot was a thing with his two-hand set shot. And John Niles and Gary Favreau, and some great basketball players over the years with some real intense rivalries. And in Over 30 League, you'd think it was all fun and games, but things got pretty intense. Don Verkey and Benny Haley and Tommy Anderson, some real intense basketball games.
One thing that you do, and you're a very humble person, you volunteer for so many youth sports events, and people don't realize what you really do. You volunteer for softball, for Little League, for PAL football, running events, and that goes a long way, and people appreciate that. So talk about I love asking this question. The 3 valedictorians in Pat's family, all 3 of his kids were the valedictorians at Plattsburgh High School: Kylie, Chris, and Brian. Now, how did that happen?
Well, you mentioned my wife Patty before, and being a coach and a phys ed teacher, I was gone a lot, so my days were pretty much 7 a.m. to getting home after practice 6:30, and she was just a wonderful mother that took the time to spend with those kids of mine and raise them right and read to them and play with them. And for me, it was just like Daddy Day Camp all the time, whether it was playing kickball out in the yard or whether it was volunteering to coach one of their teams. It was Plattsburgh, a great place to raise a family and a great place to raise children, and the school district was real supportive, and I was just lucky not to mess them up. They were high achievers and good in school, and I just continued to reinforce what they were good at, and fortunately they were able to, achieve academic success and go on to college scholarships at their schools. Kylie and Chris both went to North Carolina State on a wonderful scholarship called a Park Scholarship, which paid everything for them to go to school. And my youngest son, Brian, went to the University of Alabama, where he had the same kind of financial deal and a full scholarship there. And they've gone on to great careers. And Kylie's now a administrator at Plattsburgh State, and Chris is a pediatric dentist here in Plattsburgh. And my youngest son, Brian, lives way out in California, where he's an engineer for Apple.
That's amazing. It really is. And someone told me that you guys have a family triathlon starting at the beach. Tell me a little bit about that.
Again, with that thought that Plattsburgh is such a great place to swim, bike, and run, we started to get together people at the end of every summer to kind of celebrate the end of the year triathlon, and my family would do it, and then we had friends come, and Bob has come to a couple of those races, so I'm trying to get him to do more of the sprint races now as he's 85 years old and talking about how difficult the Ironman distance is, and I'm trying to turn him on to the shorter distance where it takes about an hour and a half to finish instead of all day to finish. And he's participated in a few, and it's a lot of fun, and we make t-shirts and we give them out to all the participants, and everybody gets a t-shirt, and we just have a great time where we have about 10, 12, 15
That's
people
fine,
competing.
yeah.
Sometimes people do it as a team, depending on the year what you can do. If you have a bad leg, you could just bike that year, or you could just swim. And we have a lot of swimmers in the family, and sometimes people will just swim and they'll find a biker and a runner, and it's just again a great way to get out and be active here in this wonderful place of Plattsburgh and Lake Champlain.
Of the three kids, Kylie, Chris, and Brian, any of them do triathlons? I mean,
they've all participated in the shorter sprint distance family race we do, but Kylie really got bit, like Bob's daughter Erica got bit by the triathlon bug through me participating in these races. And Kylie participated in the Lake Placid Ironman, and she crossed the finish line in Lake Placid and heard her name called as Kylie Goodell, you're an Ironman. And so she's still an active participant and exercise enthusiast and does triathlons. We go over to Middlebury, Vermont and do a couple of races every year, and she does really well. One of the top females in the sprint race in her age group around in all the races we do locally.
That's I know Kylie pretty well. I don't know Chris and Brian that well, but Kylie is a sweetheart, and you have a grandchild, right? How many grandchildren do you have?
We have 5 grandchildren now.
Wow.
Yep, 3 boys and 2 girls. Kylie has 2 boys, Lyle and Kip. They're 8 and 5, and they go to Bailey Avenue School. And Chris has 2 children, a son named Bennett, who's 3, and a newborn daughter named Dylan, who's a couple of months old. And my youngest son, Brian, we just went out to visit him a couple of weeks ago in California, and he's got a new daughter also, youngest in the family of 5 grandchildren. And her name is very, very cutely Ophelia, Fia for short.
Yes. Yep. Did either of you ever do the whiteface run uphill?
Yes, I did that whiteface run uphill. And the year I
Ooh.
did it, it was rainy. And when it's rainy, your feet get soaked. And those sneakers, although they might be nice lightweight running shoes when you start the race, by the time you finish, they feel like they weigh about 10 pounds each. And it's funny. It's 8.5 miles uphill. You start pretty much at Santa's workshop, and you wind up on the top of the mountain. And there's a spot on the top of the mountain where it gets a little bit flat, and it almost feels like you're going downhill after running uphill so far and so long. But that's a challenge and a lot of fun to do.
Do they still have that?
I believe they still do have that race.
All right. I'm going to do word association with you. Let's start with Clyde Rabideau.
Mayor of Plattsburgh, really enthusiastic and supportive of everything that everybody wants to do in this area. And you think of the tenacious Frenchman.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Bob Heins.
Inspiration.
Okay. Patty Warner.
Another great YMCA employee who's done a lot for the area and teaching classes still to this day. I'll go down to the widest swim, and Patty's on the deck teaching the aquasize class, and has a full pool of about 35 people taking her class in exercise, and just a wonderful supporter of all activities and a great swimmer herself.
Let's go with Kevin Colleen.
YMCA director, brought Plattsburgh into the modern age with the YMCA, and Irishman of the Year speaker.
Okay, I'm going to go away from some of the locals, and I like asking this one. So, Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson, Catskills, heavyweight. What a fighter back in the day. I know he had a fight recently that didn't go over very well for him, but I just remember biting the ear off his opponent.
Again, we have Pat Goodell here. New York Giants.
Favorite team, not doing well lately, and let's hope they can turn it around soon.
Okay. This is a tough one because you lived on Staten Island, and I'm sure some of your family members, when they were living there, saw it. 9/11.
Yeah, that was a real disturbing day. A lot of my friends in high school became firemen in New York City, and although they were able to survive that day, many of them went up to continue to work in the cleanup of 9/11, and just about all of them have suffered significant physical damage, a lot of respiratory illness and respiratory disease, and just a tragic day in the city for all people involved.
It sure was. I want you to talk about, I know you were recently sick, and someone, Joe Perselli, said you got down to 130 pounds. Talk about that if you want to, your illness.
Sure, it was a real shocker. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer about 8 years ago and was able to live with it for a while. The doctor said that it didn't need to come out, so we monitored it, and then finally it got to the point where it progressed and needed to come out. And then after having the surgery in August of 23, I suffered some complications and really struggled. And Bob, along with my friend Jeffrey, came and visited me afterwards and gave me a lot of motivation to get back and swim, bike, and run, and just real supportive in that recovery. And yeah, I got down to about 139 pounds, lost about 35 pounds from that surgery, and it was a real struggle. So I'm a little over a year out from that, and
you look great.
Gets a little better every day, and I've just been fortunate enough to have the support of my family and friends and recover and still exercise.
Now, you were 139 pounds. When you played football at Cortland, how much did you weigh?
Playing football at Cortland, you try to eat as much as you can all the time. I was always a thin guy, so putting on weight was a struggle. So every time I sat down to eat back in those days, between the ages of probably 15 and 21, 22, I ate as much as I could every meal just to keep weight on for football. I weighed about 185 pounds when I was playing football at Cortland.
Okay, all right.
Now I try to carry around the neighborhood of 175. So yeah, I was down to about 135 after my surgeries, and I felt like a prisoner of war survivor.
I'm gonna let you both answer this. So, your Summer Olympic MVP, who would that be? MVP of the Summer Olympics. Who did you really? All right, she or he was just flat out the best.
I'm going to go back a few Olympics and think of Michael Phelps with all the gold medals that he won and all the different distances and strokes that he was able to win gold medals in. So he would be my MVP of Summer Olympics.
Let's go with this year's Summer Olympics.
I don't know if the swimming's in the. Katie Ledecky is the one that, that I admire the most. I mean, keeps going and going and going and gets older and older and older and is so competitive. I mean, she's just an amazing, dynamic athlete.
The most Summer Olympics, I guess you'd have to go, at least in my opinion, with Simone Biles, with the struggles that she had mentally recovering from her struggles in the previous Olympics where she withdrew, and then to get back onto the apparatus and the flips and the spins in the air like she was able to recover from and get over those fears and achieve like she did was fantastic.
I get some of my friends said, don't talk about yourself, but I'm just going to say my MVP of the Summer Olympics was Sydney McLaughlin. Did she ever blow the field away? It's Sydney, right? What's her first name? McLaughlin. She did the hurdles, the 400 hurdles.
I can't think of it.
Yeah, do you guys remember?
Yeah, the very, very impressive victory in her event. Yeah.
Okay, I know you're a Yankee fan. I'm not sure if Dr. Heins is either.
I was a Montreal Expo fan.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I was with Ducky Drake, we used to go up to the ball games, and I just miss the environment of a Major League Baseball team close to Plattsburgh.
But that was great, yeah.
Yeah, hope the Yankees can continue their trend recently and continue to win and hopefully bring back a World Series. It's been a while, and I know we missed that, but like Bob, the Expos were great to go up and sit close to the field and bring children up and seemingly like always get a foul ball at a baseball game. It's very rare that you could go to a place and almost count on that, but that's what that became. Maybe the Tampa Bay Devil Rays will move to Plattsburgh eventually. That's what I'm hoping, at least for half the season.
To Montreal. That would be great.
Yeah, I heard that was a possibility. Maybe now it's kind of fallen by the wayside, but I know for a while there that was definitely a thing under consideration.
That would be awesome. And some guys, you both can comment on this since Pat's a Yankee fan, should Mattingly be in the Hall of Fame? Don Mattingly.
Yeah, Don Mattingly, Donnie Baseball should be in the Hall of Fame. I know he didn't have a World Series victory, but MVPs and Gold Gloves and just the epitome of a professional and going out there day after day with the back pain that he suffered and the consistency in his play and his hitting definitely deserve a spot in the Hall of Fame.
Andy Pettitte, Hall of Fame?
Andy Pettitte, another great pitcher in the Yankees when they were winning all those World Series. I think Andy Pettitte deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame. Maybe his numbers aren't as good as some of the other people, but you can't take away all the World Series victories that he was a part of.
And one last one, Bernie Williams. People remember Bernie Williams.
Yes, another great Yankee. I remember my sons, big Yankee fans growing up, of course, with me as a Yankee fan, made a sign, Bernie for president. And we brought that to a Yankee game and held that up. And we were fortunate enough to go to one of the Subway Series games back in 2000. And it was a great experience out in the right field bleachers with the bleacher creatures. And they got a real experience and exposure to Yankee baseball.
I'll throw in at both of you. What about the name Pete Rose?
Okay, that's debatable. I say yes.
Yeah, I say yes too. What he did on the field makes him more than deserving of having a spot in the Hall of Fame. And now that he's passed away, it's too bad that they didn't reward him with that while he was still alive.
He was an Expo. I mean, we used to go up and watch.
Yes.
He did some milestone. I don't know, one of the hit. Well, it wasn't
most hits ever. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, when he was at Montreal, he hit, and I don't know what milestone he passed, whether it was 1,500 or whatever. But yeah, I think it's too bad he had bad health. It's too bad they didn't do it. That's the one thing he wanted more than anything else.
Yeah. Did you guys do the time trials? Weren't they tough as anything? I felt they were 30 minutes of pain.
I didn't do the time trials in Lake Placid.
No, the time trials at Point of Rush.
Oh yeah. Those were hard.
They really were.
Yeah, those shorter time trial distances. Bob is he's on his bike for 7-8 hours, so he has to kind of take it easy in order to finish that distance. Those time trials are a total different form of training, and you're just all out, flat out going as hard as you can. and they definitely take a lot out of you and are a lot of fun. A good test of a different level of fitness than Ironman triathlon.
I think the sprints you were talking about, those are hard because you're anaerobic the whole race. It's a very, very difficult. I've never really done one. I don't know how well I do because you're flat out the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just fun to go and participate in those races. And like I said, seeing people in their 70s and 80s still participating, swimming, biking, and running are a real inspiration, and let you know that that's possible. When you've been in a hospital for any length of time, the first time in my life, like I was back in the summer of 23, you see the alternative to aging, and you look at someone like Bob and see what he's been able to accomplish and achieve, and sitting here, what he looks like in his mid-80s.
Looks great.
Compared to what the alternative could be. That's why you just want to keep moving and keep swimming, keep biking, keep running, keep lifting, just keep exercising, even if it's walking.
Mm-hmm.
And I will second that. As for seniors, and I've done a couple of speeches for seniors, you don't have to go crazy like we do, but just to get out, even if it's walking around the mall, just to keep active, it helps you mentally, and it definitely helps you physically.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. And let's kind of finish up a little bit. Just talk about, anything actually you really want to talk about concerning maybe bringing some of those events back to Plattsburgh. I'd love to see the Y Try again. And it took people like Pat. Someone has to have incentive to do it again. And maybe the Bud Run again. Or there's so many things that we could do again, but we're not doing them.
I think the Y Try would be really fun, and I think that's doable. I really do. I think if we get enough people together, we could put that together again and help the community athletically with that. There used to be the half marathon that they run, but I think the Y Try really could work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, the Y Try would be a great event to bring back. The Plattsburgh Full Distance Marathon, you asked, one of the first races I did in Plattsburgh in the early 80s. I remember starting in Rouse's Point right by the bridge and running all the way from Rouse's Point to Plattsburgh. And I remember, Tom, I believe you did that race a few times too, and finished right at City Hall. And it was a great event that involved a beautiful run along the shores of Lake Champlain. And depending on the wind that day, that race could seem like 50 miles if it was from the south, or 26 miles, which is the distance of a marathon if the wind was from the north and blowing you in all the way. But those windy days, like Bob mentioned, the wind can be your friend or your enemy. And a lot of times when you're competing in those long distance races, or any distance race, even swimming in Lake Champlain where we swim along the city and state beach, you catch the wind on the wrong day and you can get tossed around there. I've heard people say, you guys swim in there when I wouldn't even let my dog go in the water.
What is your next event, Dr. Heins? What is your next?
I've signed up. I was supposed to do the World Championships actually next week in New Zealand, but for reasons I wasn't able to do that one. But my next race I signed up for 86 is to go and do the Jones Beach race again, the 70.3. And the reason I want to do that is, I go back, my dad was a physician and he was in New York City, and he used the lifeguard in the summer sometimes at Jones Beach. And I can remember the first time I ever swam with him, he took me out and we were paddling along, and some guy said, "What is this little kid doing this far out?" And it scared me so much, I jumped on my dad's shoulders and he had to carry me back to shore.
On those swims that you guys do in Lake Champlain, sometimes I've seen the waves as big as ocean waves. What do you guys do on that day? Just not swim, or
sometimes
what do you do?
We bail out.
Yeah, we'll take one look at the water and say, well, let's do a pool swim today instead. Or, what's funny too, depending on your preferred breathing side, you might change your entrance point. Instead of starting at one point, you'll start at another point, and make it a little bit easier on yourself to breathe. And usually if you go out a little bit further, it's a little bit less wavy.
Okay.
But when you get out a little bit further, then you're also a little bit further away from shore, which can be a little bit more scary. And that's where those buoys that we tow really can come in handy.
If anyone out there is ever walking the beach real early in the morning and you see the what are they called? The buoy things in the back. That's these guys. I'm so impressed by that. I really am. And I want to thank both of you guys. Two of the most respected people in the Plattsburgh area. Both of you don't even realize it because you're both very, very humble. And people love you around this area. And congratulations, Pat, on finally and deservingly getting into Plattsburgh High School Hall of Fame, along with Dr. Heins is already in it. And that's just deserving. And you want to comment on that real quick?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yes, it was a really nice honor, and seeing all the people at the Hall of Fame banquet and former players and people that were inducted at that same time. It's a real honor, and Plattsburgh High School Hall of Fame is one of the premier initial institutions that was started a long time ago and continues today with the hard work of the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to say the committee's done a fantastic. It's a very humbling experience to be in the Hall of Fame. It's really neat, and I'm so appreciative. I'm also appreciative, Tom, of letting us share some time with you today. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, I love having you guys. I mean, Plattsburgh and even Wiry is a staple of the North Country. 75 years. It's been on the air for 75 years, and people don't realize it. I mean, what other radio station does march around the table for birthdays and national anthem and Pledge of Allegiance? And we got Chris Giroux here, who is just amazing as far as his technology ability. And and he just chuckled for some reason, but he is excellent. And guys, thank you so much. And we'll see you down the line. Dr. Heins, Dr. Bob Heins, and Pat Goodell.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. All right. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.